Hello, welcome to the Selling Made Simple live chat. We've settled on that name. We're definitely going to be calling that moving forward. My name is Will Barron. I'm the founder over at salesman.org, and I will answer your sales, business, and life questions to the best of my ability for the next, what time are we on? For the next half an hour, 45 minutes or so. I will answer your questions. Today is the 29th of April. I hope you're all having a great Thursday afternoon, evening, wherever you are watching this from. We're watching this. You can watch this now on Twitch, so we're going to be pushing subscribers there. If you, Twitch is a really good platform, undoubtedly, right? Twitch is the platform for live streaming, so I'm going to be making more of a focus there. But whether you're watching this on Twitch, YouTube, or LinkedIn, I will answer your questions the best I can. Cool. Okay. First question. Bail asks, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. How do I write a good cold email? So over at salesman.org, something you're going to see us focusing a whole ton more on. I've just recorded This Week in Sales with Victor Antonio, and he is helping me and pushing me in the right direction with some of this. We're going to be talking about frameworks, because how to write a cold email, right? You could write it in a million different ways, and you could have success in a million different from different angles. But what we're teaching that's working well over at salesman.org in our training product is a framework of what we call the motivating sequence. Dead simple. Like 4 or 5 steps, right? Dead simple. First off, with the subject line, with the first subject line and then the first line within the email itself, all you're doing is you're just trying to get attention, because you do this, I do this, we open emails. We don't even open emails. We see a subject line, we delete it immediately if it's not relevant, personalized, and potentially useful to us. So to tick all those boxes, the easiest way is to just get attention. Next, again, these steps could go multiple different angles. You could take multiple different ways to go about them, but this is just a framework of going about it. Next, you need to what we call show a need. So what do I mean by that? And if you're wondering what I'm doing under the table, I'm not touching myself inappropriately. I made a hot water bottle, but it's crazy hot and I'm actually burning my lap as I record this with you. So I apologize about the hot water bottle. So you need to show a need. You need to show the potential customer that you essentially show them something that you have that they may want. And this is a scientific experiment. We talk about this in sales all the time. What are you doing here? You're going to A/B test. You're going to say, hey, You're going to say, hey, you have this problem, we can solve it X, Y, Z. You're not going to say, hey, we have this feature and this benefit is going to be useful to you. You've got to solve problems as opposed to just dump more on the buyer's plate. And you need to test this. You need to test multiple variations of this, and one of them will work. If you do this long enough, the scientific method is very straightforward. You test enough things. If the buyer eventually is going to spend money with someone, they're going to spend it with you because you're going to suss out that A test works better than B test or vice versa. Then we all get these cold emails, right? I get them as a small business owner. I get them on LinkedIn, it's especially a ton now. People are really abusing that platform, right? That they promise all these different things and then they say, hey, let's book a demo. Let's do this. Well, there's an important step that you've got to do, especially on cold email. This is less important on LinkedIn because I can go to your LinkedIn profile. I can look at the social proof on there that you have. But on a cold email, I don't know who the heck you are. So you need to show some proof. This could be, and this is best demonstrated when I turn around and say, hey, I've trained someone else in your industry, sales training wise. I'm going to have to get rid of this hot water bottle. It's burning my thighs, man. I'll put it on my feet. That's quite nice. I've trained this organization within your industry. This SVP of sales has said 1, 2, 3 things about me. I know one of he might not appreciate this, but I do it all the time. I did it to him as well. There is a VP over at, I think he's a VP, director over at HubSpot, one of the key sponsors, the key sponsor over at salesman.org at the moment, right? Great partner for us. I've got an amazing quote that went out in a press conference from this chap, and I include that on every sponsorship email, prospecting email that I send out. Hey, this dude at HubSpot, who's a big deal, he's well known in the space, said XYZ about us. That's the kind of proof that we're looking for. Even better if it's said about you as an individual sales contributor as opposed to the company as a whole, because who really gives a shit if you sell for a massive organization and some random person says something nice about the organization. You want to get it specifically for you. So you want to be specific. And then don't mess this one up. You want a clear call to action, and 99.999 times out of 10 for a B2B salesperson in the age that we're living in. It's not a demo. It's not an opportunity to pitch. This is going to be, hey, how does it make sense for me to jump on the phone with you for 5 minutes to see if we can take this further, to see if I can help you with 1, 2, 3. We call this closing 3.0 in our training product. Does it make sense to? That's all you got right. And if you've done the other things perfectly, if you've got attention, if you've shown a need, if you've shown proof, it probably does make sense for the buyer to work with you, to jump on a call. And so does it make sense to jump on a call tomorrow afternoon? Does it make sense for me to share my calendar with you? Does it make sense for me to take a look at your Calendly link if you've seen that the prospect shares them out regularly? Whatever it is, does it make sense to is the closing 3.0 technique that we teach and find useful there. So hopefully you find that useful. But there's plenty of ways to skin a cat. There's tons of different cold email templates that you could potentially use. The problem with a template is they typically get burnt out pretty quick. So this is the framework that we teach rather than a templated email. Okay, next question. Kaiser asks, in your opinion, what is the most lucrative sales career or sales sector, in the UK? 3. Software. So software companies can pay you. Let's just talk about the back end of this slightly, behind the scenes. Software companies can pay you a shit ton of commissions because the scalability of their products, it costs them essentially once they've coded it. I'm talking in broad strokes here, but once they've coded a product, they can replicate it for essentially zero cost. They can replicate it again and again, and clearly there's server costs, there's video hosting costs, whatever it is. But they can replicate it for very cheap versus if I sell you one car, well, then I've got to produce the next car, I've got to produce the next car. So software jobs, if they're venture backed, if they've got a ton of money going behind them to just grow in the marketplace, because venture capitalists want the company to go public, they want to IPO, or they want to be bought by a massive company, like in our space, in the sales space, it'd be Salesforce, for example. They are just after revenue. They're just after numbers. So they will pay you an insane amount of commissions if you get in the right company at the right part of the growth cycle. When the product is proven, when the market is, when they've got what we call product market fit, the market knows who you are. You're not trying to explain what your product does in front of every single potential prospect. If you can get into the right software company at the right time, you can make great commissions. What else do we have? If you're here in the sales sector in the UK, so if you're in the UK, if you're anywhere near London, or you aspire to live that London city lifestyle, then finance. I don't know the number, I'm going to butcher this, but something like 15, 20% of all GDP, gross domestic product, or just revenue brought into the UK, right, comes from the financial industry in London, because it's just such a hub throughout Europe specifically, and then the world as well. So if you can sell financial products, and if you've got the stomach to do that as well, because a lot of financial products are just nonsense. It's just, there's no asset there. You're creating one thing to sell another and bundle one thing to add a number and add a zero on the end of it. If you've got the stomach for that kind of thing, which is cool. If you do, then being around London in the financial sales space would be a great shout. And then my background, medical devices. You're selling in medical devices with the right company. You're selling a product or even a service now at this point, a managed service typically, that literally affects people's lives. It affects their outcomes of operations. And so there's a level of trust there. There's a level of expertise there, that you can't just walk into an operating room and bullshit your way through a meeting with a surgeon. You might be able to do it once. You definitely can't do it multiple times over. And so you're going to be paid accordingly for picking up those skills and being integral in the marketplace. Lots of other sales jobs. I've just been talking about it with Victor on This Week in Sales. It'll come out in a few days from now. A lot of B2B sales is going to be dead in the next few years as big marketplaces. There's going to be an Amazon of SaaS products at some point. It's going to go doof, and it's going to wipe out a ton of salespeople from these organizations. Because why do you need to pay, manage, hire, look after sales professionals when a marketplace can do some of the selling on your behalf and have incredible integration into product content marketing and that side of things? It's just going to decimate a whole massive space of the sales industry. So how do you fight against that? Or how do you become anti-fragile against that? Well, you need to be in a space like medical devices, like financial services, where people want to buy from you specifically, and you've got this knowledge that is very difficult to transfer, to learn, because you take it in from like actual sat down learning about medical devices, procedures, surgical procedures, the financial structures here of selling to the NHS in the UK, selling to the government. These are things that are very difficult to learn, and so they have value in the marketplace because it's very difficult to automate it with software or replace it with software or to train people up fast. So yeah, they're the kind of jobs that you want to be looking for. They're the ones that are going to have the biggest financial upside. Okay. What do we have? Ken asks, hi Ken, hope you're all right, mate. Curious about your thoughts on Chili Piper. I'm not familiar. I know the brand, I know the logo, but I'm not familiar on the company. I'll take a look and I will report back, mate. Roderick asks, I'm in a commission-only sales job right now. Tough job, mate. Is my first real sales job. Any tips on succeeding with it? So, Roderick, feel free to post again in the chat, mate, and let me know what the job is specifically if you want to share that. But all I'm focused on right now, and this is what all of the research that we're doing over at salesman.org with people within our product, we're constantly doing experiments on them and testing their knowledge and finding out what works, what doesn't. And what's really valuable right now is having, and you can suss this out yourself or other people can do it for you, is, if you bring this back up, is having frameworks. So when you cold call someone, not necessarily a script, because a script can come in and out of vogue. You can say a script right or you can say it wrong. But having a framework of how to do, we want to go from point A to, we always want to go from point A to point B, right? What are the steps that we need to put in place to go from that place to another? So if you are in a commission-only sales role right now, I'll suss out, what do you do to bring in customers? What do you need to do to communicate with them the value of the product that you're selling? How do you get them past the status quo of, well, I can't really be asked buying this, changing this. It sounds good, but I'll stick with where I'm at. And then how do you then finally wrap up the sale, whether it's signing contracts, whatever it is? I would have a real think about how you can just sit down on a weekend or Thursday night, Friday morning, whatever it is, take a few hours and start to jot out some frameworks of how you think this works. Because once you have put it down, like physically put it down on a piece of paper, and you've sussed out, well, these steps get me here, here, and here, and gets me closer to this, gets me closer to point B, then you can start to optimize it. And this is where salespeople who do really well tend to do this by accident. They will have a bit of success. So they'll have success, which then leads to more action, which then leads to more success. Salespeople who fail go the opposite way. They don't have success, so they take less action, which leads to less success, and then they end up not selling anymore. So when you've got a framework, you can then suss out what works, what doesn't. Your framework might be complete nonsense, even though you're having success, so you've got to redefine it again. And once you've sussed this out, you can get back into this feedback cycle of, if I do this more often, if I get a cold call that works, a cold call structure, I can do more of them, great. This will lead to more action, more success. If I can suss out a framework for emailing, if I can suss out a framework for the buyer has to go through these different steps to get from point A to point B, all you got to do then is do more of it. It takes the guesswork out of selling, which is what stresses people out. It takes the need for salespeople to go, well, I just don't feel motivated today. Who gives a shit if you feel motivated? If all you've got to do is do these 4 or 5 things multiple times a day, over and over, whilst being somewhat charismatic and interesting to the buyer, you don't need motivation at that point. Then it's just discipline. And then when you can do things disciplined without external motivation or internal motivation or listening to a motivational YouTube video or whatever it is, when you can get rid of all of that and you just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's when you're going to make serious money. So there you go. Hopefully that was useful for you. Sorry, I had a little bit of a rant there. Okay. Vincent says, hey Will, Vincent here from South Africa. I just wanted to express my appreciation and gratitude for the training, knowledge, and insights that you share so freely with us. I appreciate you. You are appreciated for appreciating me. I don't want thousands, well, there's not going to be thousands. I don't want hundreds or even tens of comments saying they appreciate me, but they do make a difference. It's Thursday evening now for me. I've got another full solid day's worth of work tomorrow. And a comment like that really does make a difference. So I appreciate it because it's frigging hard work putting out this content, and comments like that do make a difference. So I really do appreciate you. Okay. So Roderick followed up on my point here of frameworks. I'm in home sales, home improvement. It's like sales engineering position. I close deals by sharing information with homeowners. There you go. Perfect. What do you need to share with a homeowner to get a deal done? You'll find that you need to do this, this, and this. There's going to be these 3, 4, or 5 objections. And when you explain this, you tell a story, you deal with these objections, the deal comes in. You've just got to suss out what that is. And everyone thinks that they're special. Everyone thinks that my sales job is different or my customers every time are completely random. They're not. People are thick. People follow the same, like everyone has their blinders on. All you've got to do is suss out what framework that you need to implement to get from A to B, and then just do that over and over. That is perfect for you if you're dealing with homeowners. You're going to have the same issues over and over again. They might be worded slightly differently. They might be framed to inadvertently to put frameworks into this again. But you're going to find that you're going to have the same problems over and over and over. Even if you just take a week, right, to document this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue, and then come up with a framework to deal with them. And your framework will either work or it won't. Hopefully it works first time, and you'll refine it over the years. And that is a valuable asset that you own then. Because again, you don't need to be motivated. You don't need nothing. You just go into work and you do the thing over and over and crush it. So there you go. Hopefully that is useful. Oh, Ken, I appreciate the message, mate. I've actually interviewed the co-founder Nicholas on the Salesman podcast of Chili Piper. I am familiar with the product. Okay, it seems like a cool product. It's Ken's quote here is quoting, "Just like dozens of other investors who turned down Calendly in the early days, we initially underestimated the importance of meetings in the revenue process." Nicholas has got some really cool data. I recommend you go over to the Chili Piper blog on experiments that they're doing of setting meetings, demos, booking things in, all that kind of stuff. I've not used the product myself, so I can't comment on it, but it was a great interview with Nicholas, and so I'll link that in the show notes when this goes on the salesman.org blog, this episode of the live chat. We'll link the interview there. So listen to that interview. That's probably the best place to start. I can't give more of an opinion on that because I've not tried the product myself. I'm going to butcher your name. I apologize. Sirapaya Trap. I've got no questions. Thanks for doing this at this time. Love from India. You're welcome. This is a far better time for me to doing it. The last few weeks I've been doing the live chat. I've been absolutely shattered and basically just talking absolute nonsense by the end of it. So yeah, you'll probably see more of these conversations happening, or more of these live chats happening more around this time. Pin Banks asks, I am a sophomore in college. So we don't call, in the UK, we don't have freshman, sophomore, these different titles. So I have no idea what year you're in. Let's assume you're in the middle of college. So you've got a bit of time to think about this. And I'm looking to get into software sales. Have you any tips? Also, which sales jobs do you think is most financially rewarding? So we touched on that at the top of the show. Software sales, because they can give you massive commissions because the replication of their software to multiple customers is very cheap for them. So they've got lots of margin to give you cash. And it's a hot product at the moment. Lots of markets are moving over to this SaaS or software as a service model. Traditional industries are moving over there as well. So I'd take a look at that. But I wouldn't think about things from 100% a financially rewarding perspective. You've got to suss out what you want to do long term. When I was in medical device sales, I loved hanging out with surgeons. I loved being in the operating room, nerding out on these cameras, explaining why we have an SDI connector rather than a HDMI connector, why this monitor costs $5,000 when the surgeon can pick one up from Curry's and grab one for 300 quid instead, and kind of beating these kind of objections again through frameworks that we used every single time to go through them. suss out something that you want to do longer term, or you think that you want to do long term. You've no idea what you want to do. You're in college, you're in a university, right? I can only speak to myself here. I was an idiot in university. I just knew that I wanted to make some good money. Sales was a quick way to do it. And I wanted eventually to run my own business and be an entrepreneur. And selling was going to be the most difficult part of that process of running a business. So I wanted to get experience on someone else's time. I wanted someone to pay me to get the experience to learn to sell, because obviously it's integral to running a small business. So suss out what you want to do. Suss out where you want to be in 10 years. And then plan your first sales job on the back of that. Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Would you like to move up the corporate ladder? In which case, you want to be an executive by the time you're 35. So maybe look at a larger company and suss out things from a career perspective from that side of things. But yeah, don't worry about it too much, because 90% of the decisions you're going to make are going to be the wrong ones. And don't set your expectations too high. That's my advice for anyone at college or university. Okay. This is interesting. I've never seen this before. It just says LinkedIn user, does not say a name. So maybe this is someone who is not a friend with me or contact on LinkedIn who's consuming the content. I don't know, but I'm going to answer your question. What are your thoughts about the effectiveness of the principles of insight selling? Insight selling is a brand. I'm not 100% familiar with the content, books, training, that side of things. But the idea of selling an insight is integral to modern B2B sales. It used to be that you could go somewhere at a networking event, meet someone, basically browbeat them, bully them into getting on a call with you. You could cold call someone and the office desk phone would ring and they don't know whether it's their boss or if it's someone else or if it's their wife, their husband. So they pick up the phone and you've got 30 seconds to jump down their throat and convince them to get another call with you. That doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't exist. I'll talk about it every week. I've got an ongoing bounty. If you can cold call my phone, I'll give you $1,000. I've got one business phone, right? It's here, my mobile, my iPhone. If you cold call me, and even better, if you do it live on one of these live chats, I'll give you $2,000. You can't do it. There's, unless you dealt with me in the past, unless we've done sponsorship deals, unless HubSpot, Salesforce, one of these large organizations, unless you're Victor Antonio that I collaborate with, nobody has my number. So you can't cold call me anymore. So insight selling is incredibly important, because if you do cold email me with an insight, something that I did not know about the industry, a trend, something that's moving forward, something that's shifted, I'm going to reply to your email. We had a great email. I can't remember the chap's name now. I'm going to do a piece of content on it. I'm going to break it down. Emailing from rev.com. He's going to get some love on my LinkedIn profile, because I'm going to do a post about it and shout him out. He listened to This Week in Sales. Oh no, he listened to the Social Selling Show with myself and Daniel Disney. We were talking about creating content on the show, and Daniel was talking about the importance of captioning videos. And I said, well, I'd like to do it, but I don't have time. I've got budget resources, and then that was it. I didn't think about it. It was just a passing comment from myself. This chap from rev.com emailed me saying, hey, I love your content. Yes, thumbs up, got my attention. 2, I listened to the show and it seems like you've got this, and this issue. Yes, you've shown me a need. 3, he shared, I won't say who it is just in case they don't want, I don't know why they wouldn't want to know who the transcription software provider is. But he named a couple of people in our space, in the sales training space, who use rev.com for the transcriptions. So that was the proof. And then the call to action, which I might have deleted go back to this for a second. So he's got my attention, he showed me a need, showed me the proof, and the call to action was, hey, does it make sense to jump on a call and discuss this? This is a freaking perfect email. Now, I already use rev.com for our subscriptions, our transcriptions of videos and podcasts and that. So I emailed him back saying, hey, do you have, I think literally what I said, as in the sales conversation has started. This is a great prospecting email. This has got me on the line to continue the conversation. I turned around and said, hey, do you have a point where you can start offering bulk discounts? Because we've got like 700 odd episodes of the show that could all probably use transcribing. It's going to be like 30, 40 grand worth of transcriptions. Is there a point when we're now just not some schmuck where like we're a small enterprise or small business customer where you can give us a discount? And he came back to me and we're now having a conversation about that. All from an email where we did these things right. Got attention, showed a need, showed proof, call to action. Wow. So there we go. So that's insight selling. it's not necessarily you gotta get attention using an insight. And the insight for this chap was, hey, I listen to your content. I'm a consumer of this, and this. We can do these 1, 2, 3 things for you. Wow, that was a long answer to a short question. Jad says hi. Hi, Jad. Hi from Dubai. Harsh asks how to approach new prospects, email, LinkedIn, or cold calls. So you do not get to decide this. This is fundamental, right? Let's go back to the whiteboard of truth and justice. So we have sales on this side. We have the marketplace on this side. I'll write that out, make it clear. What you want to do, most likely, right? So here with your prospecting, what you want to do is you probably want to send some cold emails and call it a day. Hopefully get some leads from it. Nice and easy, use an automation tool. Well, if the market accepts that, frigging great, you've won. Cold emailing, if you can do it and the marketplace accepts it, is perfect. It's so easy for salespeople to drive tons and tons of clicks, calendar, bookings, and everything else, right? But the marketplace might not want that. The marketplace might go, well, cold emailing is bullshit. I'm not got time to do this. You can't actually get if you're dealing with executives at a high enough level, well, there's a secretary going through their email and blocking stuff off and deleting things. So maybe the marketplace decides that cold email isn't for you. Now, maybe you think, well, LinkedIn. If I can't get past the gatekeeper on cold email, then I'll try LinkedIn instead. Great. Does the marketplace accept it or don't they accept it? What else did you try? Or cold calls, which I've just given you my thoughts on. That they are basically bullshit at this point to do any real prospecting. So the marketplace might accept it or might not, but you don't get to decide this. What you've got to do is what we call A, B, in this example, C testing. You've got to test each one of these. Spend an hour each morning doing X, Y, Z, doing so many cold emails, an hour each morning doing so many LinkedIn messages, an hour each morning doing so many cold calls, and you'll get 3 meetings booked, 17 meetings booked, 9 meetings booked, and then this is it then. You do whatever performs the best. This is something that sales leadership should be forcing salespeople to do, and then collating all that data across all the different salespeople within the team and putting together best practices. Unfortunately, most sales leadership is terrible and they don't do any of this. If you amalgamated all of this, and then again, I'm banging on about it because it's top of mind because we're doing tons of work over at Salesman.org in our paid program for it at the moment. You collate all this data, put it into a best practice framework, and you're going to kill it. So you don't get to decide the best way to approach new prospects. The marketplace decides that for you. You've got to then test what works and refine it over the months and years to come. Roddick says, fully appreciate the advice. Thank you. You are welcome. Tend to overthink each sale, but I'll write out my process. There you go. That solves you from having a framework, stops you from overthinking because you go in, you follow the pattern, you leave. Where's the stress that everyone talks about in sales? Who cares if you get rejected? Because once you've got a framework, you then move from person to person, framework to framework to framework, and you're not leveraging luck anymore. You're leveraging skill and science to get the deal done. Jad asks, just wanted to say I liked your post-COVID sales techniques video on YouTube, but with all that market here in Dubai real estate, buyers can't decide even when we all try. Can you advise, please? I don't really know anything about the real estate market. I definitely don't know anything about the real estate market in Dubai, so I cannot help you with that question, unfortunately. But I appreciate the good faith question. Okay. If you see me looking over here, I don't think you can see it from that camera. Let me put this camera on. Oh, you can't quite see it there either. There's a bunch of screens over here that let me know if we're still actually live or not, because I don't want to be chatting to myself for 15 minutes answering a question without realizing whether we're live. Emily asks, where or what can I sell to avoid a 50-hour work week? I would like to sell part-time if possible and actually live my life. I'm totally on board with this. It's a difficult pitch to a sales hiring manager that you want to work part-time if they're not advertising a part-time position. But yeah, so time is the only thing that is non-renewable, right? If you change your sales job and you earn less money, you work less hours, well, you can always get a different sales job, earn more money. You can always take the money that you're earning right now and invest it so that you've got more income coming in later on in life. You can do all kinds of things. Money will come, go. The marketplace will die, thrive. It's all cyclical. It will all come back around. But your time is the only thing that you can't get back, right? So it's you've got to protect, you've got to fight for it. So if you're in a position where you're working 50 hours a week and that money isn't going somewhere that allows you then to retire early, then you're literally giving your life away for nothing. For what? Maybe you've got a slightly bigger house. Maybe you've got a slightly bigger car. Don't get me wrong. I live in a very large house. We have this place studio as well. I drive nice, fast performance BMWs. There's going to be some news on GTRs coming in not too distant future. I'll leave it at that. You know, I've got a Omega watch because I want to be James Bond. You know, I spend money on all kinds of shit, but I would give all of this away. If I got ill, you know, heaven forbid, whatever, I got ill, I would sell everything and I would fully retire for the amount of time that I had left. I would not be doing any of this stuff. So where I'm going with all of this is, I feel like the question sounds almost like pressured of what can I do to avoid a 50-hour work week? Well, you're going to reduce your income, but you're going to increase your life. And so it's dead simple. Sales probably isn't for you because there's going to be very few hiring managers who will accept someone with the attitude that you've got is not wrong. The attitude that you've got is perfectly correct. But a hiring manager is not going to see it like that. They want people who are going to come in, crush it, work unlimited hours, and it's going to be quite difficult for you. So I think you're on the right tracks. I sympathize with you. I would be doing the same. My goal of all of this is to retire early, right? Talked about it on the podcast all the time. Talked about it on the live chats somewhat regularly. This idea of retiring early, retiring at 45 rather than 65. So I feel you, but it's going to be difficult to get a job where they're not going to... It's going to be difficult to get a part-time job unless you're going to go alongside someone who's perhaps on maternity leave or something like that and you can fill in for each other. Okay. Kenzo asks, what is the best way to design a CV? Or in the US, it'd be a resume. Simple and traditional, or modern and include links to media, pictures, videos? It's a good question. If you are emailing direct, this is how I'd frame it up. If you are emailing directly to a hiring manager, if you're trying to get a job at an organization and perhaps they're not advertising for jobs right now, there's no open placements, but you know that if you can get... Like if you're killing it in sales, most sales managers will take a look at you, they'll interview you, they'll have a chat with you because it's such it's such a rarity to have someone who's absolutely killing it and who's got evidence of that. So if you're sending it to a hiring manager on the basis of, hey, I know you're not advertising for salespeople at the moment, I love the company, I love the product, I think you should consider me, then that can be fully multimedia laden. Probably a good thing to do that in the age that we're living in with video. Maybe you include some prospecting emails that have worked. I don't know, so some kind of evidence of success. But if you're applying to a online job over at monster.com or even LinkedIn, I think they have these services where you can kind of hire and recruit candidates on there. Don't include all that stuff because it all just gets filtered and dragged away anyway, and no one's really paying attention at that point. When you're unfortunately, your CV is very likely to go into just a big pile of CVs, and it's read by some intern, and any mistakes, anything they don't understand, it just gets lobbed away because, especially if you're going after a lucrative sales role, there's so many people applying to them. So that's how I'd break it up. If you're going direct, which you should do, you should be emailing, cold calling, getting in front of hiring managers with your CV or resume, make it fully multimedia. That will be a real differentiator in the marketplace. And as the market becomes more high-tech and more media-based and content-based in the sales space, it shows that you can create and you can do all that stuff. Great. If you are applying to just a regular job that you found on monster.com, indeed.com, wherever it is, then maybe don't include all that stuff because it probably won't get through the filters anyway. What else do we have? Ken asks, what is the target date to acquire a full-size GTR? I can't talk about too much, Ken. The problem isn't acquiring the car. It's where to keep it, because I'm never going to drive it. It's a complete waste of money. And so, like I said, I'm not going to say too much because it's coming down the pipeline, but think of this sucker as a marketing tool as opposed to a car that is going to have any use as a utility to me whatsoever. So there's a few things that need to happen for storage and stuff for the GTR, but it's coming, and there's going to be some cool content on the back of it. Harsh asks, any good sales books you'd like to recommend? Nope. Most of them suck ass. And so over at salesman.org, I've threatened this a few times now, but I'm actually going to have to do it. Every live chat we do, every interview we do, every time I meet people at conferences, obviously not so much anymore, people ask me that question, what sales books do I recommend? And the simple fact of the matter is most of them suck. Most sales books are like a chapter of something that's useful, a long blog post, and then a load of bumps so that they can sell it as a book. As opposed to just doing a blog post. Books are great for building your expertise because nobody actually reads books. It come from Amazon Kindle, the stat, but it was like 87% of books never get past 87% of books that are bought on Kindle. People don't get past the first 10% of the book or the first 10 pages, whatever it is. So there's not many books that I recommend. I like Jim Keenan. I like his book, Gap Selling, If You Had to Push Me. I like the Corporate Visions books are pretty good. The Challenger Sale is good. You've got to be careful with that approach because it can come across a bit arrogant if you get it wrong, if you're just slightly off with the tonality, the messaging. But yeah, that's kind of where I would leave it. Spin Selling, that's a classic book. Neil Rackham, that'll give you some foundations and fundamentals of sales. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend. I'd get on YouTube, get on the podcast. There's no real sales textbook. This is something I want to develop. It's probably not going to happen this year now because we're doing a lot of stuff with GTRs and we're doing a lot of stuff with our own training product over at salesman.org. But probably next year, I want to put together an actual textbook of this is how you sell. This is how you find prospects, not the latest trends. I want to talk about the psychology behind it. I want to use the characters that we have all over our products and training. I want to storytell within it. It's going to be a big, thick, audacious book. It's not going to sell very well because people are looking for a quick fix, right? And this is going to be the guide. This is going to be you don't need another book on selling for the next 25 years if you buy this. What I'd like to model it after is a book for strength training called Starting Strength. It's super in-depth, slightly too in-depth, but it becomes a textbook. It becomes something you have on your desk that you can reference when you need a primer on this objection or this how to cold call or an email or the personality traits that make salespeople successful, how to become more optimistic, the different frameworks. So yeah, I can't recommend too many books, but yeah. Harsh says, Gap Selling is great. I have it on Audible. So there you go, Gap Selling. Gap Selling does a very good job of explaining very literally the gap. This is something that salespeople often miss. And you've got to emphasize that gap. We frame it slightly different in our training of, we'd say you've got a current reality and the buyer has a potential better future reality and you've got to bridge from one to the other. It's a similar concept to gap selling. But yeah, it's important. Don't just come out with the pitch. Really suss out what that gap is or what bridge you need to build for the buyer. And that will pay you dividends. Okay, what time are we on? 43. Okay, I'll answer 2 or 3 more and then we'll wrap things up. Jack says, I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out. I'm thinking about sending a cake to new customers. I mentioned this on the phone with a prospect and they laughed. How stupid is this? Well, the customer that you talked about it with and they laughed, definitely send them a cake. Send them a cake with your face on it or like something just ridiculous. Because that's the kind of thing, especially when you've talked about it beforehand and you've got a good response over the phone, that's the kind of thing that they're going to post on their social media profile. And it might get you a little bit of fame internally within the organization of where the heck does this cake come from? Oh, it was Jack, the salesperson at Acme Products who sent it over. Those little things for the sake of, I don't know how much a cake is to send, 20 quid for a cake and another 10 quid for delivery or whatever it is. Those things can go a long way with keeping buyers on board because you become a mini celebrity for 10 minutes within the organization. and you become the cake guy. But to send one to every buyer or every prospect or every customer, like if you sent me a cake now, the address is on the our website. If you sent me a cake, Jack, I would then use you as a reference as how to follow up with potential customers in all our training moving forward. And so again, you become mini famous then to our audience of what, like maybe a couple hundred, 500 people will see this on video, and like 10, 15, 20,000 people will listen to this on the audio side of things. Some of your colleagues and peers probably listening as well. You become mini famous there. So yeah, if you can, if it's fun and it's interesting, then definitely do it. Like I was just recording with Victor Antonio, and he shared with me, and I didn't know this. I think he assumed that I knew this. And it's all over his LinkedIn. It's all over his Instagram profile. So maybe I should know this. He likes turning pens. So getting a block of wood, putting it in a lathe spins it, use a tool to shape it and create a one of one product. And he was saying that saying this is all on This Week in Sales that will come out in a few days from the day that I record this. And he was saying that he sends them, or used to send them, to your clients, customers. And I was then winding him up saying, I've known him for years, but I've been recording with him for 6 months. I didn't know this, and he's not sent me a pen. So hopefully I'll get a nice bespoke pen out of the back of this, out of my pestering of him. But that kind of thing goes a long way in the internet age that we live in, where emails are just deleted, calls are just hung up on, buyers are fickle, one mistake and they'll drop you for a competitor because so many products are commoditized. A cake, a bespoke pen, whatever it is, for your best customers, that could go a long way in the world that we're living in. Okay, on to a couple more. This might be the last one because it's actually hilarious. Renee asks, how common is it to fake numbers in the CRM? Renee asks, I've not said your second name there, which is good. Maybe you don't want to say this on a live chat. Because in the future, maybe starting next week, I think some of these questions will start popping up on the screen as opposed to just me reading them out. So Renee asks, how common is it to fake numbers in the CRM? I do it regularly, and I think my boss even expects it. Okay, let me take a sip. Now, this to me says there's an issue with your company's culture. That you're bullshitting your boss and they know about it and they don't care, which means that they're probably bullshitting their boss and they know about it and they don't care. And then at some point, somebody probably does care about it because their job is actually on the line, but you're so going to be so far away from them that it's just a big mess a big mess waiting to happen. So if everyone's doing it and it's fine and nobody cares, then you don't look like an idiot by reporting correctly and saying, hey, I'm just being real here, by saying, hey, I'm doing half the calls, but I'm actually accurately reporting all this. You don't want to get sacked by being accurate here because no one's got your back. No matter what your sales manager says, no matter what your sales leadership says, they will sack you the first instance they can if they can replace you with someone better for the same price. It's just how capitalism works, just how business works. There's so little loyalty in most companies and organizations. So if everyone is faking the numbers and everyone is genuinely happy with this, you're not making an assumption that your boss is happy about this, then it is what it is. I'd be more concerned with, are you hitting your sales target? If you're crushing your quota and you're faking your numbers, that almost becomes irrelevant as long as you get your quota crushed. So hopefully that is useful, Renee. But definitely if you change jobs, don't fake it anywhere else until you know what's going on in these organizations. Okay. Final one. Anna asks, hey, Will. Hey, Anna. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. I start my new SaaS sales job next week. Congratulations. I'm excited for you. That's really exciting. I'm a beginner and I want to make it big in sales. Do you have any tips? Basically how to become the very best in any sales team. So the first thing that you need to do when you join the company, right? Ask for this, beg for this, find the best, not the most experienced, because just because you've been at a company for a long time doesn't mean that you're good at the job. You might be an absolute idiot. Find whoever's selling the most product. Find whoever's making the most commission. Don't be shy about asking that question. Go to your sales manager and say, hey, who's making the most money right now? Not 10 years ago, who's making the most money right now? And then see if you can spend a day or two, a morning, see if you can stay late, come in early, whatever it is, and sit next to them if you're in inside sales, which you probably are with SaaS sales, or go in the field with them if you're out in the field, if you're doing outside sales, and suss out what they're doing. You don't need to copy it verbatim. You don't need to write down the exact script or formula. You don't necessarily want the script. What you want is the formula, and then copy it. At least that way, you know that you're heading in the right direction with some of this. Now, if you're doing cold calls, cold emails, some of what you say, do, how you act is going to be different to the other individual. If you're new in sales, probably going to be slightly less confident at the start. You're going to be slightly faking it, which is fine. You're going to be faking it till you're making it to a certain extent. So some of what more experienced, or again, not more experienced, but more salespeople who are crushing it, what they do is going to come what we call unconsciously competently. Whereas you're going to try and do things consciously competent. You're going to have to think about how you pitch things, what you say, how you address. But you want to suss out from the person who's crushing it right now. It might be one person, it might be a team. Copy what they're doing, find out what they're doing, copy it, implement it yourself. That's going to be the quickest way to ramp up your success. The company is hopefully going to do some training with you. They're going to do some product training. Hopefully they're going to do some sales training. Hopefully they're subscribed to our content over at salesman.org in our paid content platform. And we're not taking on new people right now because we're relaunching some of the product in the next few months. Otherwise, I'd say that's where you spend your first paycheck. You get on salesman.org accelerator. But that aside, because you can't physically sign up for it at the moment, that aside, find someone who's killing it and do what they're doing. Dead simple. Don't overcomplicate any of it. Find what they're doing, copy it, make it your own. So there we go. Hopefully that was helpful. I will wrap up with that. I hope you're all going to have a very pleasant Thursday evening, Friday day, and then a lovely weekend. My name is Will Barron. I'm the founder over at salesman.org. I'm going to fade to black elegantly, unlike the last few weeks, although I've just ruined it. I've just ruined the elegance by talking about what I'm going to do. I'm going to fade to black. We're going to wrap up here, and I'll speak with you next week on the Selling Made Simple live chat.